Hey everyone, Coach Sage Kande here with another Training Talk Tuesdays, episode number 4. We're going to answer your top voted question from last week. Apologize for getting this out late again. I actually had my second COVID shot yesterday and did feel a little bit of side effects. Was a little extra tired in the last 12 to 24 hours, but already feeling better. But now that we got that out of the way, thank you so much to all of you that submitted all these wonderful questions. The top voted question actually was from a triathlete. Hi Sage, triathlete here. How many hard training days, and those are in quotations, hard training days, can an athlete have per week between cycling and running, in your opinion? Now, it's a great question, and I'll admit, first disclaimer here, I am obviously not a triathlete. I did a sprint triathlon in high school, not very good at swimming, so I have some very limited experience in knowing a lot of triathletes here in the Boulder area. But there is a big lack of tri experience here, so I'm definitely not the expert on that. From looking at it from a science type of standpoint, a muscle strain and stress type of standpoint, and knowing kind of what some other pro triathletes kind of do, I'd say the first variable on that is whether or not you're training for an Olympic distance triathlon versus something like a half Ironman or Ironman distance triathlon, right? The amount of stress or high intensity workouts relative to high volume workouts or like long bike rides, long runs, would change maybe slightly in that kind of mindset, right? How many weeks you have training for a certain type of race. Olympic distance or sprint distance being a little more intense. But it also might depend a lot, of course, on your personal experience, your background, whether you were a runner first and got into cycling and swimming, or you were a swimmer first, got into the other sports. You're balancing all those disciplines, right? Swimming, cycling, running. So it is a bit tricky, and it may come down, honestly, to how much time you have to train and your resources available. And like running training, I imagine you could kind of periodize or change that training in blocks over time as you get closer to your events. So, if your weakness is more on the bike, you might want to focus more on that early on in the season versus if you're kind of a natural runner, that's kind of more of the, I don't want to say afterthought, it's pretty critical, but it would be something that you would want to get used to coming off the bike, that transition, doing like block or brick training, I guess. But I really don't know anything about swimming, to tell you the truth. And with running training, we usually focus more on high intensity because you get more bang for your buck. If you're not running 5, 6, 7 times a week and running's not your only thing, you might as well make some of your running sessions count. Now that being said, these are very long distance events. It's straining on the aerobic system a lot. So heart and lung efficiency is very important, and not bonking, as well as staying hydrated. So having sessions where you aren't doing really high intensity short track workouts, but more tempo runs or long cruise intervals would be the way that I would go. So for example, doing things like 2 times 3 miles or 2 times 5K at more of a threshold zone, a little slower than 10K pace, would be a good type of workout. And you could even do that in the course of a same training session. Maybe you do that right after you do a kind of hard bike ride. So then you're getting kind of a hard bike ride in and following that up with a hard run, and that's one hard day, but it's really kind of 2 hard sessions, right? That might be a little more stressful. You might not want to do that, more than a couple times a week, but that's just one example. Now, when you're mixing in the swimming and you're mixing in hard cycling, especially climbing on the bike, and I have learned this from trying to climb my bike up some of these iconic climbs in Boulder, Flagstaff, Magnolia Road, you cause a lot of muscle fatigue in your muscle fibers of your legs. So when you're on the bike and you're really mashing the pedals and grinding really hard, it tires out like a lot of your muscle fibers, and so it could really crush your running workouts the next day. If you try to do a speed session, you might come up a little slow, but part of that is all about experiencing that cumulative fatigue, working through fatigue and training so that when you taper and before race day, hopefully you're more resistant to that fatigue. And yeah, it's going to be hard. It's a triathlon. It's hard. But you're able to run at a pretty fast pace and still move efficiently, even though your legs might feel really stiff or really locked up, and you might need to take in a lot of carbohydrates and fuel, especially on the bike. So that's what I would say about that. So in closing, to really answer the question, again, this is actually one of the harder questions I've had to answer just because I'm not a triathlete, is you know, it really does depend on the person. There's a big time commitment a lot of times when you have to go to the pool, you have to ride your bike, and then you're mixing in running. So it depends on the person, your experience level, how much time you have to train, what resources you have available, what other life stresses could be factoring in to how you feel on hard workouts, and kind of mentally figuring out how much you could stress yourself without burning out mentally, right? It's not a fun thing to be training really hard all the time. But that being said, with the non-impact of cycling, non-impact meaning there's no big gravitational forces usually, and the same non-impact with swimming, you could usually get away with a bit more high volume training and more frequent training compared to if you were just running a bunch, like 100 miles a week or something crazy like that. So mixing in some hard sessions just between running and cycling, I'd say you could definitely do, you know, one of those brick workouts where you're going hard in both, and that's one day. But then another day you might be doing, you know, a shorter interval session. And by shorter, I mean something like kilometer repeats on a track, or mile repeats on a track. So, you know, 6 times a kilometer, or 4 times 1,600 meters, 4 times a mile at, you know, 10K pace to 5K pace, be a good kind of VO2 max, high-end aerobic stimulus and speed training for that run on tired legs. Whether or not you go out then later that week and do a long training ride, long session on your bike, that could be a long weekend ride. I'm not 100% sure if you cyclists consider those really long rides a hard day. I would consider it a hard day if you're spending that much time in the saddle. Much like with our running training plans that Coach Sandy and I have at Higher Running, when you do a long run, it's usually not just spending time on your feet super easy. A lot of times when we schedule long runs or long bike rides, there's some aspect of pace changes, there's some aspect of vertical gain, there's some aspect of pushing yourself a bit when you're really tired. But like I said, again, it's not set in stone every week. Some weeks are going to have to be more recovery weeks, lower volume. You maybe don't have any hard workouts. Some weeks maybe you could hit it with 3 quality workouts spread out over the course of the week. But I would include some of those long rides or long runs in that training schedule. So thank you so much. Comment below with next week's training talk topic. The top voted question will be the one that I answer next Tuesday. Hope you're doing well. Thank you so much again. Thanks to the Patreon supporters for really making this channel possible. Shout out to title sponsor Hoka One One. Keeping the dream alive. More updates and vlogs to come your way pretty soon. Thank you again. Stay tuned for more VO2 Max Productions.